Thanks, Mike, for coming. As promised to our LinkedIn network, and not just LinkedIn network, maybe it's on other social platforms. We committed that we actually will have an interview together about your book, The Emerging Leader, Seven Core Characteristics of Effective Leadership. I really enjoy this book. It's somebody actually in your network was saying that it's like a Bible of leadership books, which I must actually admit that it kind of is. So before I start, I will do a little bit of an introduction, a little bit from myself, from my point of view on how I met you and how we know each other. So pretty much you came in my life in 2011 when I joined the current company that I'm working. And it was a new company. It was a new team. I went from a maximum of, probably I had a maximum of 10 people under my wing as a leader in my professional life. That was the maximum that I got. So all of a sudden I got in a company with 33 people in my team that was running 3-shift operations, new company, new technology, new leadership style. Everything was on the go. A lot of employment at that stage. Every day a new person. So it was really in a state of flux. And I had my hands full with everything. And all of a sudden the company decided to actually do Certificate 4 in Leadership with LMA at that stage. Where he actually came in, and I was just thinking at that stage as personally, I said, this is exactly what I need, a leadership course right now when I have my hands full. That's all I need to, it's like something piling on my shoulders, just put it in, more lead. So anyway, all in all, when we did the course, actually my brain switched a little bit from a reactionary mode that I was applying at that stage with a little bit of more tactical, strategical because of the course. So I learned about change management. I learned about conversation. I learned about a lot of stuff that is actually in this book as well. Yeah, it had a really positive impact after I had the course. Alternatively, I did further down another course, but that's a little bit later. And this is actually how we met. We had actually, I think, from my perspective, we had a good relationship as a coach-student. That's why actually I wanted to have an interview with you about the book, because I was really happy that you come out with the book. I was actually thinking to myself, when you will come out with the book. So all in all, it happened, and that's pretty much my context on how I met you. Would you like to add anything else, like from your professional view? I know actually that you worked for a few good blue chip companies before, and I also know that you told us in a course at one stage that you had a actually health issue, not a healthcare, that sort of changed your perspective on leadership as well. So if you want to expand on that a little bit. And
Yep. Well, thank you for the intro, and it certainly was nice to have worked with you and the other people within Boeing down here at Port Melbourne. So a great experience way back in 2011. I got into working for LMA after I had left corporate life. And the 3 blue chip companies, one was in the UK, a major road building company. I am a road engineer. And that company was maybe known to some of the people that are on this call tonight. It was called Val de Travers, and it was a big asphalt company, a quarrying company, and a road construction company. And I worked for them for 10 years. I then came out to Australia and I worked for another blue chip company, which was CSR, which is now Holcim, and they were in concrete, quarrying, transport, and all of the construction material side of the building industry. And I got headhunted to join ICI. ICI are a huge global company, and I was invited to lead up a division of the company in explosives. Initially explosives for the quarrying industry, small mining industry, and the construction industry. And I had a ball. I was told that I could organize some ideas of moving the company from being in standard explosive sales to actually becoming a contractor within my clients' organizations. And so we started creating a product called Rock on Ground. That's where we used our explosives to do the work, create the size of rock that suited the customer's crushing equipment. And that became very successful, moved us from packaged explosives to bulk explosives, and ultimately it went global. And I had a role for about the last 3.5, 4 years of my life, literally of my life with ICI, of literally going all around the world, starting off in South Africa, a lot in Europe, and then across to America, Canada, and down into South America, and then finally into Asia Pacific through Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. So I had a ball, but during that time, all I was focused on was work, and all I was focused on was results. I was a fairly engaging manager, but I was always focused on the results and basically making a profit for the company. And so at times, I only lost one person in the whole of the time I was with ICI.
That's pretty good.
Which I'm proud of. Having said that, I was probably at times a tough boss to work for. But a couple of years before I left the company, I had a heart attack. And I had a heart attack mainly because I really wasn't looking after my work-life balance. I wasn't looking after my own health. When we talk perhaps later on, Edward, and we are talking about emotional resilience, I kept a lot of things inside rather than releasing it and allowing myself to be emotionally intelligent and emotionally resilient. And it resulted in me having a heart attack. And that knocked me sideways. I thought I was indestructible. Just as an aside, I ride a motorbike. I still ride a motorbike. I used to race them. So I've always thought of myself as totally indestructible. Having a heart attack brings you back to life. But it also gets you thinking about what's important. And at that stage, what was important for me was to reinvent myself and to find other ways to actually give back for what I thought had been a fantastic life, not knowing how much longer I had to live and so on. And so I ended up going and learning how to teach and how to become an adult facilitator in courses. And one of the companies that offered me a role because of my background was LMA. And I ended up doing courses for them up to diploma level. And I worked for a couple of other organizations, one of which was Box Hill and another company called Australian Training Alliance, where I got up to the advanced diploma level. So I enjoyed it. I love teaching people. And I also did a lot of training to become a coach. I'm a professional certified coach for the ICF and have numerous qualifications. So that's my background, basically.
That's great, and I really like the story. And you were thinking that you were like Superman, and then it brought you back on the earth, and you actually seen that it's a little bit of kryptonite around you as well. So that's interesting. So just tell me, what determined you to actually write this book, and why now?
I started, first of all, back in 2014, working with one of the big building construction companies, with the HR department there to develop a program from supervisor level to sort of supervisors that were already in the company that had worked up, and also young engineers that had come straight from university. So they were a little green as far as interpersonal skills, and to go from that level right up to the executive level. And the company were looking at 4 programs, but a little bit similar to what we did with within Boeing, where we ended up with 3 different levels from a diploma to a Cert 4 and down to a Cert 3 at the 3 different levels. And we developed, it took probably about a year and a half, and we looked at what was the best way to basically get a group of people that were as diverse as that, understanding that each of them had something to take away. And the woman that I worked with was called Stephanie Caldo. She was young, she was very focused on wanting to do the best by the team she was going to be bringing the program to. And I wanted not to become too academic. I wanted somebody that could help me keep the thing tight. And I had a friend that worked in LMA that we both, way back in Scotland, where I come from, we both played rugby together, a guy called Colin McMillan. And together we ended up creating this program called Emerging Leader. Okay. And it was a bit rough. It had lots of pages to it. And we tried it out with another company. And ultimately, by about 2018, I really had a good program. But I'd started another coaching qualification called Conversational Intelligence. And that was an 18-month-long program, of which there was a 6-month maximum, what they called a CAP project, a competency assessment project, that was based on the numbers of things that you'd brought out of the program. In other words, conversation, the ability to help people grow, and a lot of other skills like emotional intelligence management and so on. And I decided to use the Emerging Leader as my CAP project. Oh, okay. And that meant I had to tighten it up and look at the structure of it. And it was exciting. I really enjoyed pulling it together. And part of it was I had to then deliver it specifically to somebody at a fairly high level. And I did it with a general manager in a corporate organization here in Port Melbourne. And it went really well. He really took it on, and in 3 months, he ended up going through the program. And at the end of it, he gave me 2 of his teams to go out remotely to these operations and take those teams through the program, and also the ops manager that was responsible for Victoria. And I took him through the program as well, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And I had to And so I thought, well, I've got all this material. I've really fine-tuned it. I've had good feedback from some of the people who I'd been teaching one-on-one. I'm going to take their thoughts into account. And as you come to write a book, there's stuff you throw away, or there's stuff that you make shorter because you're not talking to it, you're just addressing it in the book. And so the book became something that I really did in the 3 or 4 months that we were locked down in 2020. And it came out fairly well. From writing the book and getting the manuscript, that was the easy part. The hard part was getting it all through the printer and the publisher and so on, which we've done.
Well, talking about positive impact of COVID-19, people become more creative. I've seen that in this book, you made a little bit of a reference about these uncertain times as well, and also the transformational journey that a leader in this particular generation has to do, probably from where we are what was forced upon us, and where we have to go, and what are the pros and cons. And I'm really interested on your opinion about this transformational journey. If you could give us a few nuggets here.
I think the important thing in any really important challenge, difficult times, particularly when you have no ability to impact on what is creating the problem. And in the case of the pandemic, it's the government and the health departments that lock you up and make certain that there are restrictions to what you can do. But like any difficult situation, the most important thing for management, and by management, I'm talking about the range of management, is to actually look at the opportunities that gives you. Because ultimately you can't do what you were doing before. Some businesses can, but very few businesses are not going to have felt some significant impact by this pandemic. And so the first thing I always go to in any time when you're going through change, there are three very simple things. The first is, where are we now? Where are we now? What are we actually doing? What's the business all about? Secondly, where do we want to go? And that really is the one part of that whole question that you need to open up to all the various teams, because no one person, and particularly in management at that high level, yes, they'll understand money and they'll understand what they've got to do in terms of their stakeholders. But ultimately, this is where you get the thinking caps on. You look at innovation. Where do we want to go? What's the business all about? Where are we almost at the end of a product cycle or a service cycle? Is it the ideal time to reinvent ourselves, to do a different business even, to look at different technology? A lot of the things that are being talked about in this last 18 months have come from people being forced to think about, where do I want to go if we're going to survive in the future? And so the last one of those questions is, how do we get there? Now, in the book, way back early in the book on page 9, I refer to what I call, and it's on the back of the book, but on page 9 it refers to transformational leadership. And transformational leadership comes about through 4 specific styles of learning, if you like, or learning that you need to have. The first one is you have to have a degree of knowledge. But knowledge can be taught. That's content. You reading that book, you'll have more knowledge at the end of it than you had at the beginning.
Correct, yes.
And that is purely transactional. It's transactional learning. You can teach anyone if they're willing to learn various things. The second thing is, from that learning, what does it do to your behavior? What do you take on board? And in LMA, we used to spend a lot of time talking about behavioral change that creates change in attitude. And again, all of that is transactional. Then you go to the next things, which is what is transformational. And the first is that attitude that you got through learning and study and process now becomes about me, the person. I've changed my attitude. I'm a different person. Instead of it being all about me telling you what to do as a manager, I start asking you. I talk about an outcome I'd like to achieve and say, how are we going to get there? I'm brave enough. I show courage. I don't need to be the leader. I just need to be the person creating the vision and the direction in which we want to go. And at times to accept it's going to get challenged, and for me to give them the ability to feel safe. That's one of my core commitments as a manager, is to keep people safe and feeling that the business isn't going to go downhill because of inappropriate behavior or so on. And the very last thing of those 4 in transformational management is my values. and my values should align with what I say and what I do, and how I encourage people who work for me to, if you like, judge me on do I walk my talk.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just very quickly, if I may, Edward, the one thing that I think is really important for people. There are 6 little things that transformational leaders do. They build trust, and they act out of integrity and adhere to their values. That's key. The second thing is they have a clear vision and set realistic and achievable goals.
Yeah. The smart goals.
Yeah. They create a sense of purpose, and they align that purpose with what people can do as a job. 2 more to go. They understand the necessity for change. Now, in today's pandemic, we've got to change.
It was pretty much forced upon us, yeah.
Yeah. And they inspire others through effective communication. And they're obviously totally passionate about the role they have as a leader.
Okay. So probably I will jump a little bit, actually, from a company perspective in this time. What do you think from a leadership style perspective, a company should knuckle down, whether this pandemic, or should reinvent itself? I mean, you touched a little bit about innovation. Basically, we play defense or offense. What is your opinion?
Well, I basically believe that rather than looking at offense or defense, that the most important thing is to be proactive. And as I've just mentioned, by being proactive, you're going to go through those 3 questions. Where am I? Where do I want to go? And what am I going to do? And so the most important thing is to look at sustainability, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as a person, I mean, there are lots of people at the moment who've enjoyed, some haven't, but a lot of people have enjoyed the freedom that working from home gives them. And they're not particularly looking forward to coming back into a more controlling environment, which a lot of offices represent. They've enjoyed the fact that they've been trusted, that they've carried out the tasks that have asked of them. In fact, one of the things that's been quite interesting is a lot of people's output has been greater. And one of the real worries for some HR people and some companies is people are working longer hours and people are doing more than what was really expected of them. And of course, some people feel that they're being put on. So there's still lots of communication that needs to take place.
Yeah, and I feel that we are still adapting to this phase, because on one of the end of spectrum, yeah, you have more productivity, but at the other one, even if you are working from home, you can suffer a burnout because you don't switch off, and sometimes you don't make a difference between your call it work office environment and family environment. It's pretty hard to do that from home, depending on the available real estate that you have. I'll go now also a little bit in the book. So the book is structured like in 4 parts, which you call guidelines. And the first one is actually know yourself, or know thyself. And I'm not trying to give away a lot of from this book, but it's more related on psychometric tests around your behaviors and your defaults and so on. Could you explain how you want to approach like the first guideline?
Well, what I've done is I've limited it, Edward, to 6 particular things that I think are important. And I'll explain why it's important. Paul J. Meyer, who was the founder of LMI, which was the founder, if you like, of LMA, which you went through their course, was one of those American gurus of very vocal in the 60s and 70s. A little bit like the Stephen Covey of this world as well. And one of the things he said is, unless you understand yourself, can motivate yourself, then you will never be able to understand and motivate other people. So it's
Okay, correct.
critical to motivate and lead and understand yourself. So if we're looking at that, the easiest way to start understanding yourself is to, if you like, have somebody guide you. And what I've tried to do in the book is put a couple of questionnaires that get you looking at, what are my values? What do I want to achieve in my life? The second thing I've said is, we don't all communicate in the same way. So sometimes I've got a style that suits the way I think. Um, I think in a particular way because that's my nature. That's the way I was brought up. You can watch in a classroom when you put up too many slides and people just get lost. And
Yes,
yet
yes,
other
correct.
people love slides and just want to do that. Other people like to do exercises on a table or whatever it might be. So understanding your learning style so you know how to communicate and react with people. Know why some people click your hot buttons. Why do some people you just don't get on with because they're too detailed or they're too flippant. They don't
Okay.
take enough attention to what they're doing. The other thing that's really important that I've put in this part of the book is knowing your strengths. And the way I would explain that is Buckingham, way back at the early part of the time, it's now done by the Gallup organization, but
Okay.
Buckingham, Marcus Buckingham, way back in the 19, sort of 95, 96, created a book which was called Know Yourself. And what it was to know your strengths. Now, if you think about it, often a company takes you on because they've heard about you or your qualifications look great. And within a few months, they're sending you off for courses to rub off what they see as the rough edges. And there's
Yeah.
been several books that have been written about, for goodness sake, don't knock off the rough edges. That's what you liked about that person. That's the strength. And even
Yeah.
though sometimes they can be slightly disruptive, they're bringing a quality that's important to the sustainability and long-term growth of the company. So know your strengths was important. And the final one that I've brought in, there are two psychologists, Honey and Honey and Mumford, and the other one was Kolb. And both of those guys both of those teams created very similar models, with Kolb being the first and the most detailed model. But they both put slightly different words to it. And what I've done in the book, because depending which part of the world you come from, different models are used. I brought the two models together and ended up with some tables allowing you to actually end up reading Kolb, but understanding if you'd only gone through Honey and Mumford, that you could understand the words. So the know yourself thing, in my view, is well worth going to. And by the way, in the book, there is a link to go and do a Displex at a discounted rate. I organized through the people that do Displex in America. They actually do it for LMA, and or some of the LMA agents, not LMA itself. But I actually asked them if they would give me a special rate for the book. And there's a link in the book, but there's also a link on my website to the book page to everything that's linked in the book. Go and get it, have a look at it. This stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and control
Yeah.
or compliance.
Actually, in saying that, I actually did this test, and I found it disturbingly accurate. You know, when you have some traits that you don't quite, you are in denial about them, and It's really fascinating, and especially when you read it, there's what's this here? But it's a pretty good one. All right, so from know yourself, then you go. I think the second guidelines: management skill sets, competencies, and strategies. I will actually probably lead you in a little bit of how to stop procrastinating area. I think everybody is guilty of that from time to time, including myself, although that I'm perfect and everybody's perfect around us, but yeah.
Okay. What I have suggested here for you, knowing that people quite frequently, when you get to procrastination, don't quite realize what it's all about. Why am I procrastinating? A lot of important things in the book come under two areas. One's communication, but the other is management. In the management, I've put it under procrastination itself, the art of delegation, because often we should have delegated a task and we don't know how to do it properly. And so we get the task handed back to us, or it comes back in a way that we spend more time sorting out the problem, when in reality we should have delegated the task properly. And the final part of that little equation, and I'll go into the models there and the page numbers, but the important thing there is holding people accountable. So if I delegate a task to somebody and I'm a busy manager, a busy team leader, whatever level you're at, the most important thing is the person you've given the task to, you need to check whether or not they understand what you're asking and its importance. They understand when you want it. That's the SMART specific. By Wednesday of next week, I need such and such and such because it's a critical part of what we're doing in the business. That's specific. Is it measurable? Absolutely. I can measure it by the fact you deliver it. Is it achievable? Now, it's only achievable if you literally have a conversation with that person and check that they have the skill, the ability, the resources, and the willingness to do it, that there's something in it for them. So you then get back to the next one, which is realistic. Is what I'm asking of this person realistic? Now, if you've dumped on them and they've got tons of things and they're drowning or they're stressed, it's not a realistic thing to delegate to that person. All you're doing is dumping.
Yeah.
And the final thing is anything you delegate, if you want to hold somebody accountable, they must be prepared to get something from it. It's not all about you. That person must think it was important for me to do it and I've done a good job. So you've got to recognize that.
Yeah, give credit where it's due.
Now, talking about, though, there's a very simple thing in the book, and I would suggest, I'll give you the number. Procrastinations in page 89 to 94. Three steps. Yeah, page 8. I love you looking this up.
Yeah.
Page 89 to 94.
Yeah, that's exactly. And you have the steps there. Pretty much. Yeah, recognize that you are procrastinating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now
and
go to page 96. There are 3 very simple steps to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
That's page 96. Very simple. But what I'd love you to do, which is even simpler, go to page 231, right at the back in the communication.
Yeah.
231 to 233. There's a little model there called Simple.
Yeah. Yeah, that's,
and it is a fantastic model. It's not mine, it's somebody else's. But I can tell you it is so simple to remember, and it is so simple to check when you are looking at what you're doing. Now, the final thing, which I'm going to give to you, Edward, because you've asked me at other times about if you are procrastinating, what should you do? the most important thing to do is set a to-do list.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, a to-do list and set the priorities. And anything, if this is really important for you, that you need to do it, anything else, either get rid of it, delegate it, or tell people you can't do it.
Yeah. It's really interesting and fascinating when you put the pen on the paper and the whatever is here, it starts to become structured on the paper. So regardless if it's a digital form or it's a pen and paper, yeah, it's really interesting what's happening in that brain of yours, and just realize, hey, my capacity, it's over here, over capacity here, so I have to actually delegate, or I have to even sometimes delay. And another thing that people should understand, procrastination is not like laziness sometimes. It's actually paralysis sometimes, because you have a lot of tasks or a lot of projects or so on. And at one stage you are just spinning your wheels because you don't have a structure in place.
The other thing that leads us into procrastinating, particularly in big companies, now we don't realize that the impact we're having on other people until it's too late and we've got a reputation. And what I mean by that is, if we've done a to-do list and we've got everything recorded out, often what we're doing is we've got far too many things that actually need to progress further, and we don't hand them on, but they don't ever go up our priority list. They sit there as almost, oh, well, I haven't been told yet. Oh, it's gone away. Well, it hasn't actually gone away. Somebody else has done it. Or if it didn't get done, somebody is saying, I can't trust Edward because he didn't do. And the more you get that reputation, the more that people won't trust giving you things. And ultimately you become, I'm talking about a big organization, you become dispensable because you're not actually pulling your weight.
Yeah, it's and also a good thing about the list itself, it's the fact that sometimes you actually have to choose your battle in the sense of, hey, if you have a list with 20 things, are all the 20 things important? So maybe you have to choose one and go after it. And maybe that one actually encompasses about 5 or 6 items from your list as well. Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I know it sounds very simple to do a list, but some people don't do it. So that was probably my first lesson when I did the course with you in 2011, and also coaching along the way. And that sort of become right now always, when I feel that I'm spinning my wheels, that's the first thing that I'm doing. And ideally you should have 1 thing or 2 things to achieve a day. And then it's not too much to remember.
True.
The older we get, the harder it is, you know? Yeah. Okay, so the third guidelines, you go emotional competence. Actually, you touched a little bit intelligence and resilience. And I think this is an important one nowadays, especially with resilience. I know that usually change is a perpetuum continuum for every company, and not just for companies, for life in general, but especially right now with the pandemics and so on, we're talking about, forced change, and also about resilience, whether you work remotely, whether you work at office, it doesn't matter. Could you expand a little bit on that guideline?
I can. I think the important thing for people to, let me just pick up a couple of things.
Yes.
The important thing for people to think about, first of all, there are things which are called intrapersonal. That's about you. It's about me. It's intrapersonal in emotional intelligence. Whether you're talking emotional intelligence, emotional resilience, emotional agility, the first, and this came originally way back from stuff that was coming out at the end, towards the end of the 1900s. And Daniel Goleman was the real father, if you like, of emotional intelligence. Before that, everyone was talking about IQ.
Yeah.
your intelligence, and they put a quotient on it, and it was all it's not a nonsense, but it isn't a good measure of people's ability to do a job. In other words, there's a lot of brilliant, bright people who couldn't do a thing as far as business or leadership was concerned. So the two intrapersonal things that are emotional intelligence, one is self-awareness. Know how you feel, what's happening with your body, whether your pulse rate's going up, whether you're feeling a bit squeamy, whether you're feeling nervous. All of those things are self-awareness. Only you really know them. Some people might see you sweating or see you red in the face or whatever, but the reality is it's you, it's your body. And the second one is, I can feel that. How do I actually regulate that without creating damage to yourself? And by that, let me give you a little picture. In all of us, we have an inner child. That inner child was created in our first 7 years of life. Some will go on a little bit longer, but in 7 years of life, we've had some bruises, and we've got wrong feelings, and we've got attitudes to life. We've got a little inner child that from time to time lets us know that they're in there and they're feeling a bit scared or frightened. And it's okay to say, it's okay, you're fine. Yeah. You're going into a big meeting, stop the cuddles. Give yourself a cuddle, make yourself think about that. But equally, somebody in the workplace knows how to hit a button and say something that recalls a memory that you had. Maybe you didn't get picked for the football team or the soccer team or whatever it might be. And you felt rejected. And when you're an older person, somebody in your team starts ignoring you. And the little child in here, it's a hot button, it's been pushed. Now, in my case, I frequently would hold all my emotion together. And I shared this with LMA. In mine, I ended up getting a big scar down my chest because I had the heart attack as a result of lots of emotions that were like that, and my body was miles too uptight. And that changed my life because I never want to be in that situation again. The things that you have to have for emotional intelligence as well is the ability to create a motivational space, or the ability to motivate yourself to do something more than you would normally have wanted to do. To have empathy for other people without becoming sympathetic, but empathetic. And you have to have a certain amount of people skills in the way you communicate with those people. They're the skills. Now, emotional intelligence became emotional resilience. How good are you at bouncing back from disappointment, from things going wrong, somebody dying in your life, all of the things that happen to human beings. And nowadays, emotional resilience is far, far more important than just basic emotional intelligence. But in reality, you have to have the foundation of emotional intelligence to be able to look at how do I bounce back. And the other person who, if you've been looking on LinkedIn, I've been so blown away by this woman. She's a psychologist, Dr. Susan David, and she has brought the language of what's called now emotional agility. And I've just bought her book, but I've been reading so much of what she's been posting. She's got some TED Talks and some other things. Emotional agility is the next step up, and how we both manage ourselves and the environment that we're in, and being sensitive to that.
That's pretty cool. I actually seen the LinkedIn post with the book that you bought, and you made me curious as well. So probably I will buy that book too, because the next level, and it seems that that's the natural path right now. So go with the progress, I suppose. And okay, so one of the last guidelines that you had, it was, and probably that goes hand in hand, obviously, with the emotional competency as well, the conversational competency and effective communication as well. And that's even, that's my opinion in reading the book as well. Like when you are empathetic, what you're doing, what's your conversation, and any other conversations around feeling an environment that you have around you with people, and how you touch them, and how you lead, and how you receive feedback. Sometimes feedback could be a little bit wild or not, and just suspend judgment and so on. So yeah, could you expand a little bit on that one? Actually, you even brought two things. Sorry to interrupt you. So you brought actually two things: conversationalist IQ, and another one which was really interesting. I really liked how it sounded. Not that it's a good thing. Emotional leakage.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I didn't cut you off guard with that one.
No. Let me stay on something first. On the two things that I would like to try and get across here. One that I think is absolutely fundamental to good leadership, and that is becoming excellent at what Judith Glaser talked about as being conversational essentials. And in very simple terms, it was being open to influence. So let other people quite frequently influence your thought process. Prime for trust. Assume that people are going to do what you're asking, that people are not going to come back 2 days later and say, oh, I didn't do it. Start from a point of, I do trust you, I'm communicating with you, and I have an expectation, and they have an expectation of me. The next is prime for trust in terms of trust itself, the transparency in the way you communicate, the relationship that you create, the understanding of what everything is about in terms of the people, their ability to do the job, what you're asking of them. Share the success, and finally tell the truth at all stages. Tell the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. The next one is ask questions for which you don't have answers. And if you remember in LMA times, Edward, I would often say to you as we were talking, tell me more.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Give me an example, and I wouldn't come back. I would say, tell me more. What did you do after that? Why did you do that? Yeah. Why is actually not the best way. Quite often when you ask somebody why, it puts them on defense because it's a very strong question.
Yeah.
Oh, what should I have done? It becomes defensive. The other things with Judith are listen to connect, not judge, confirm, or reject. It's a lovely little line. Remember to know who you're talking to. So she calls it conversational agility. Sometimes you need to be able to talk at a level that you're not using complicated language or management speak. Other times when you're talking up to your boss, you have to keep things very short and to the point.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I'll go into detail. And sometimes the final thing to look at on those is how well have I checked that the other person understands me? Double click on, have we actually communicated to your satisfaction? The other thing in conversation that is a real takeaway, and I hope you've managed to look at the book, it's called, or the précis of the book, it's called Crucial Conversations, and it's how to deal with those really difficult conversations.
There are a few books on that, on crucial conversations. Yeah.
very, very important. It's a fantastic book, and I would genuinely recommend that as a book to buy. Crucial Conversation. Patterson, Remy, Macmillan, and Schweitzer.
Yeah. I actually seen a few good copies around the work with that particular book, and I actually had a read as well. That's one of the probably most important skills from leadership perspective in your toolbox, as it seems. Now, this book is really great, and actually, when I did the review by myself on the book, I actually was saying that you can use this book as a tool, like as a tool in the sense that you might have an issue, a challenge, you just go with the book and actually look at the structure or the framework that you should actually solve a particular issue from leadership perspective, and not just from leadership perspective, but also the book, how is structured. And you were actually telling me in the beginning of the interview that this book is actually a system that you developed during the last few years. So is this book representative of your coaching part or method that you are applying as a coach?
The short answer is yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, I do use it as a coaching program, and I've had a lot of success with it, both for teams and individuals. It's a long program. It takes 12 sessions together over 3 months, and the person goes through and reviews and reads, and then we go through and you do a 2-hour session every fortnight. 1 hour of it is training, 1 hour of it is coaching. So I love the program. It's certainly a self-coaching book, so you can use the book yourself and go through it. And at the end of every chapter, there is what I call a reflections page, where you go through and it asks you some questions. So it's a great guide for that. Now, do I do other training? Yes, I do training from sales training, things like key account management. I do that. I do conflict resolution. I do negotiation. And I do a number of other leadership skills in particular subjects. But I also do coaching where I'm coaching at business and executive level, where basically I use the skills that I've learned as a coach, where I'm here to listen to and help you find solutions to issues that may be outside my experience in terms of the technical side of it. I haven't got a technical hat on, I've got purely a coaching hat. I'm not a life coach. I don't want to ever be a life coach. But I'm very much a coach on helping people find themselves and find their inner strength. So I do coaching like that, and I do a lot of that at the moment overseas to humanitarian not-for-profits, and I do it on a pro bono basis, and I love it. And I'm dealing with people at CEO level down to people who are at operational level. So that's what I do as
Anyway, I really wish to thank you. Great insights on all the aspects of the book and in general as golden nuggets. Hopefully our networks will actually appreciate this. There might be things that some people might say, oh, this is actually basic or not, but it's always good to actually refresh yourself from time to time to go back either to basics, but this is not actually just basics. It's actually much more than that. And probably a question, where can we order the book as well? So
okay, the book in its color version, so there's a book which has got lovely colored diagrams in it.
This particular one here.
Yep. So there's a color version and there's a black and white version. You can buy the black and white version on Amazon, and you can buy it on Lulu anywhere in the world at a reasonable price. They set the price, not me. But on my website, which is strategically.com.au, on the website there is a page that is live, and that page allows you to use PayPal, and there is a discounted price for both the color and the black and white, plus the postage. Now, basically at the moment, it's really only available for people in Australia with the postage. But if there are people overseas that want to make contact with me, I can get some pricing for them, particularly if they want the color book. The advantage of buying the book is you go through a process of looking at the website. The website has got tons of resources that support the book. They're shown as resources. There are videos, there are links, there are resources you can download. Every one of the links that is mentioned in the book, and the links are actually shown in print at the back of the book, but on the website, if you click those links, as they're numbered,
the links are live.
Site, yeah.
Yeah.
So the book as a black and white on my website sells for $24.99 Australian dollars, and the coloured one sells for $34.99.
Yeah, I think the price is not that important. I think the knowledge and the systems that are in it will probably pay in the first 1 hour of reading the book. I will actually, if you permit me, I will actually put the link in my comments here. And this is actually comment to my network here on LinkedIn, and not just on LinkedIn. Please comment if you feel that this was actually worthwhile, and also if you have any other questions, maybe I can re-invite Mike for some other sessions down the track. And also, the biggest service that you can do for us today, other than to buy the book, is to basically reshare this video or post to your own network if you feel that it will help. The book is not just for leaders in itself, it's for anybody who aspires to a leadership position. And it's not just like for a manager, it could be actually, that's my opinion, for people that are individual contributors, or I would call them super technicians, that they are at a level of knowledge in that particular field, and then they sort of become a natural leader of the particular department, tribe, team, and so on. And you can use that without having a title or rank. You can actually use it for basically developing yourself as a work frame. That's my 2 words. So in saying that, thank you for being here, Mike. And actually, we had 1 hour. I'm not quite sure if I will actually put it as episodes or as in one go. But really, thank you for today, and it was really enlightening. Thanks for your time, Mike.
I really appreciate you inviting me to be interviewed, and I've really enjoyed it. So thanks a lot, Ed. I really appreciate it.